Have you ever wondered what it takes to turn a solo landscaping gig into a thriving franchise business? Picture this. From a chuck in a truck to the owner of Grounds Guys of Newmarket, Aaron Pritchard spills the dirt on his 15-year journey in the landscaping realm. So what does it really take to build a landscaping empire? Let's dive into the green world of entrepreneurship and franchise success with the owner of Grounds Guys of Newmarket, Aaron Pritchard. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the PromoMinds podcast interview series. Today, I have someone that we connected probably 5 years ago, maybe even 6 years ago now, when we were in a program for Grant Cardone, and we ended up going to 10X in Miami back in 2019, and we'll get into some of that. But my friend Aaron Pritchard, he is the owner of Ground Guys in Newmarket, Ontario. He's been a franchise owner for over 6 years now. He's been in landscaping for over 15 years. And in 2022, his company did over $1 million in sales. And since then, they're doing a little bit of restructuring. But I'd love to bring him on because he's got a lot of things to share. He loves, obviously, Grant Cardone and real estate. So we're going to have a great chat. So please welcome Aaron Pritchard.
What's up, Steve? How are you?
Aaron, thanks for joining the podcast today. I've been looking forward to this conversation. We've we've kind of like passed notes or I guess interacted periodically over the past few years. I saw you were out in the Rockies doing some hiking, and so it's kind of cool to finally connect after 5 years since 10X in Miami. So I'm curious to know like everything that's gone on from there. But maybe if you could start off and just share a little bit about what it is you do and how you got started.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, and thank you for doing that. I've been in landscaping for 15 years, currently the owner of the Grounds Guys of Newmarket. So we are a franchise, a little larger in the States than we are in Canada. However, we were founded right here in Canada. So that's a cool story, cool thing. So yeah, just evolved over the years, had no real rhyme or reason to get into landscaping, just wanted something more than my job back in the day. And landscaping was a pretty easy barrier to entry, and that's the route that I took. So a lot of trial and error over those 15 years, a lot of mistakes, and but with those mistakes, you get better every day. So here we are, 15 years later.
Awesome. Now I'm curious, so you became franchise owner 6 years ago.
Correct.
Prior to that, did you own your own business or were you working for someone else?
No, I was on my own. Like in the industry, it's something we call a chuck and a truck. So a chuck and a truck is literally one guy in a truck, and they can go around and maintain yards and do some landscaping, and don't really have a team. And that was me. So it was a lot of trial and error during those years. And my wife, Michelle, it was literally her and I, with a lot of learning to do, right? So I call it 8 years of treading water. And no matter how good you are at treading water, 8 years of treading water is just not going to be fun. So being like a business owner per se, or self-employed is probably more accurate. It's really not the be all end all if you don't have a plan to kind of expand and get bigger and have a team.
Gotcha. So is that what kind of opened you up to looking at more of a franchise opportunity, or how did that come about for you?
It was certainly a part of it because I felt, like I said, that the treading water for 8 years, I felt like I was missing something. I'm not doing something right, or many things right even. So I'll call it the grand idea at the time was to franchise the business that I already had. And then, it didn't take too long to realize that I had no business to franchise. There was not a franchisable model in place. But I had reached out to the Grounds guys to try to gather information on franchising and how to become bigger. And halfway through my first conversation with a gentleman by the name Russ, we were on the phone for probably a good hour and a half. And the first half of that was me just bombarding him with questions. And I'm just trying to soak up all this information on how to get started. And about halfway through that conversation, my mindset just switched. And it's like, these guys already have it figured out. I don't have to figure out the website and the marketing and the this and the that and the systems and the software. I didn't have to do that. They already had all that figured out. So once I really started looking at it from a different perspective, I really let my guard down because I had my guard up. I knew Russ's job was to move me through their pipeline and vet me and see if I was a good fit for them. So I had my guard up because I didn't want to be sold, right? I didn't want to be just moved along the line. So I had my guard up, but then just the conversation, it flowed so naturally. Russ is a great guy, and they really did have a lot of things figured out. They had a lot of trial and error figured out that would have been really painful for me had I tried to do that on my own.
Gotcha. So you have the conversation and you get started with Ground Guys. What was your first year like working with Grounds Guys as compared to working by yourself?
It was the cliche of drinking through the fire hose. So like everything was coming at me, like opportunities I had never had before. Just much larger properties were coming my way just simply because they knew the Grounds Guys name from other franchisees that they had interacted with or done business with in the past. So I really got to learn pretty quickly what brand awareness was and what brand power was. And it's a thing. Whereas I had zero of that before. Like you're literally just, an ant on the ground. No one knows you exist, right? So it was a lot of learning, still a lot of trial and error. I hired my first one or two guys, and then halfway through the season, I was finishing on my own again. So there was a lot of software to learn and processes to learn, but I mean, it was all good. But the first couple of years were still very challenging, just because now you're trying to learn software, but I was still a chuck in a truck, even though I had brand behind me now. But I mean, you're still out in the field for 10, 11 hours a day, maybe even 12. And then you still got to learn the systems and the missed calls and the emails. But at least it was the start that was pushing me kind of a little more to where we are now.
That's pretty neat. So
Yeah.
then was 2018 your first year with Grounds Guys?
Yes, it was. I finished the winter of 2018. Well, 17-18, the winter of 17-18, I finished on my own. No employees. I didn't even have subs for the winter. It was just myself. And it was the best year we'd ever had. Like 2017 was the best year I ever had. And then the first 5 years with Grounds Guys, every single year was the best year we ever had. So I knew pretty quick and early that it was the right move for me.
Nice.
Yeah.
So then what led to you going to the 10X conference in Miami?
So that was 2019. I stumbled onto Grant just before I joined Grounds Guys, maybe a year before I joined Grounds Guys. The winter of 2017, I was at the gym and I was actually getting sick of my playlist, my music playlist. So I started just kind of searching people on YouTube that I could maybe learn and listen to while working out. And I came across a video of Grant. I watched one video of Grant and didn't like him. So I kind of moved on and just, went to my Tony Robbins and whatever, Robert Kiyosaki. Then I see another video from Grant in my search, and it was the second video. I don't remember what it was, but it was the second video that he grabbed me in that one. And whatever he was saying just started to resonate with me. And then he did an event. I think it was called BYE, Best Year Ever. And that was literally 2 months. It was the end of December, just before that growth con in February. And for joining the BYE, the best year ever event, which I think cost me $50 or something, he
Yeah, it wasn't
was
much.
discounting, yeah, he was discounting tickets to GrowthCon. And the ticket price was like $97. And I was like, wow, I really want to go to this. But being in the winter business and I was still on the crew, I thought there's no way I can't leave for 3 or 4 days in the winter. And I know you know what our winters can look like, right? So I wanted to go, but I was scared. I was like, I can't do it. And then what does Grant talk about? He's make the decision now and figure the rest out later. And when I heard him say that, I was hooked, and I was like, let's do it. Let's roll. So of course I'm buying the ticket. Now I got to set up the flight and the accommodations and whatever. I got to find someone to cover for me. I pulled a friend in and gave him a quick friggin' roundabout on a tractor. Like, hey, here's what you got to do. And I left for 3 or 4 days. I left Thursday, came back Sunday night after the event, and I went with a carry-on and no other luggage. There was no sandals, there was no shorts, there was like 2 or 3 pairs of pants, of course, toiletries and socks and underwear, and like 2 or 3 t-shirts, and that was it.
That's amazing.
You got to commit, right? So I
That's
committed, and
true.
I'm so glad I did. And I attended every other every growth con after that virtually because of course then COVID came, but I've been to every growth con virtually after that. So it's just a way to stay plugged in.
Absolutely. So then, I guess to build off of that, what were your biggest takeaways from that first in-person growth con that you did?
I mean, just listening to the speakers, to be honest, I don't even know if it's applicable to our lives, but I mean, the way that Grant entered on that event, parachuting into the stadium, just, I don't know how you top that. You'll never catch me jumping out of a plane, yet this guy does it and lands in a freaking stadium. It's like, I don't know, like just that alone just gets you to think bigger. And even when you're scared, like just step outside of your comfort zone and just do things. It was uncomfortable for me to be there because I knew that if we got snow back home, I was going to be a mess. Like, is everything okay? Is there problems? But you got to do those things. You got to step outside your comfort zone. And just the speakers that he brings on the stage are, of course, all amazing in their own rights. And the story you and I were talking about with Jesse Itzler, like his story is just freaking amazing. So it really just, for me, gets me to see the big things that people do and things that can be accomplished. So it certainly helps me to just try and expand my mind and not think too small and just really go after bigger, better things.
Yeah, I agree. There's something about just being around that atmosphere that breeds confidence, that breeds bigger ideas. So I agree with, it's hard to pinpoint certain things sometimes. But again, just being there and the fact that you committed and figured it out, you already accomplished something just getting there. So that's a feat in amongst itself. It's
And
like,
just for perspective, most people go to Florida, even more specifically, maybe Miami, for a nice, relaxing vacation. I went there again with no shorts, no sandals, no swimsuit, no nothing. I went there for business. And it was fantastic. It's the only time I've ever been to Florida.
yep. I think that I think that might be the only time I've ever been too.
Nice.
Yeah, that was kind of a similar trajectory for me as well. I did that BYE program. I learned a lot from that, and that whole that little program plus going to 10x, that really shifted my thinking as opposed to like big picture thinking, and also helped with my running. So at the time, I was just training to run a 5K. And then after Jesse Itzler's speech and getting hooked on to David Goggins and that, it was like, well, how far can I go? Why am I just doing 5K? And then next thing you know, well, almost 2 years later, I ran 100K. And it was based off of that, the same way that Cardone broke down his goals in that BYE program was start at the finish, work your way back, and break it down. And it's incredible when you look at things like that. You can have like a $1 million goal and you break it down month by month, week by week, day by day, hour by hour. And then it's like, okay, I just have to focus on that. So
Yep.
it's, yeah, absolutely. So then I guess you said that you've been a part of 10X since then, whether it's virtually or have you gone in person more than once, or was that the only time that you went in person?
No, because then COVID came and kind of took things over, and I know the states, dealt with COVID a little bit differently than we did here in Canada. But it was convenient for me. Again, I was still on the crew for our winter services, so I didn't want to roll the dice a second time and maybe get caught. So I have not been back in person, but I do plan to go in person next year.
Nice.
Yeah.
Where is it next year?
I'm not too sure. I know he just kind of puts them together and doesn't really tell you where, or he doesn't really tell you who the guests are going to be. So I'm just going to roll with it, and wherever it is, I'll end up, and yeah, we'll see what
I like
happens
it.
then. But no, I don't know where it is yet.
Hey guys, if you're looking for a great marketing book to check out that's not typically discussed in the marketing world, I highly recommend checking out the book called Supermensch. It's the story of Shep Gordon. Now Shep, he's been the manager for Alice Cooper since before his rise to fame. He's responsible for creating the celebrity chefs that we know and love today. He's hung out with the likes of the Beatles, the Dalai Lama. He's even had the actor Mike Myers beg him to let him do a documentary about him. This guy has so many great tidbits and examples found within this book. One key concept is guilt by association, but I highly recommend checking it out for all the great advice. That's Supermensch by Shep Gordon. It's an autobiography. All right, let's get back to the show. I like it. All right, so that's 2019. You come back from 10X. You're big picture thinking now. You start applying it, and as you said, every year, the first 5 years that you were a part of Grounds Guys became your best year ever, each year. And then we get into the pandemic, where it was just absolutely chaotic in terms of construction, landscaping, everything to do with backyards. So I'm curious to know, when the pandemic hit in 2020, what how did it impact your business, and how did you have to pivot at all, or what was life like for you that first year?
So I mean, in the beginning, like, you're not sure because everybody was getting shut down. So like we really didn't know from one day to the next if we were supposed to be working, if we weren't supposed to be working. I mean, obviously our work is 100% outside. Our biggest client then and still is today is York Region, so the municipality of York. And I was even on the phone with them saying, what do you guys want us to do? Like, what do we expect it to do? And their words to me were, we expect you to adhere to the contract. And I was like, okay, so then we're working. And I had other, they said they were landscapers. I have no idea. I had calls coming in from other landscapers asking if we were going to go to work tomorrow. So that was a little different because I didn't quite know how to handle that, because just because we are, I don't want to give information that may have been incorrect at the time. I just was going with what our biggest client told us to do. So the first year for us, landscaping was weird. It was almost like people were stuck at home and they were just spending money for 2 years. And that's what happened. Like I've never said this publicly, and I don't like to talk about it loudly because this wasn't the case for many people. But like we were on fire, like we couldn't keep up. We were turning business away. And again, I don't really like talking like that because that's not how it was for a lot of other people. But we were very fortunate in landscaping that one, we were able to work still, and two, like people were just spending money like crazy.
Yeah. It, it was pretty chaotic. And as you described at the beginning there, where you weren't really sure what the protocol was. And I know we were on the phone with like our local municipality, trying to get a hold of MPs. The swimming pool industry, they actually, the Pool and Hot Tub Council of Canada, though they're not affiliate with they're not a branch of the government, but they're kind of like lobbyists, I guess, in a way. They kind of govern themselves and that sort of thing. They had put together a pandemic, like a COVID specific website that talked about the different changes and trying to make it a little more easier to understand for different regions, different areas, and but there was definitely a lot of confusion. Like
Mm-hmm.
the we ended up we had the police came to our facility to shut us down, and then reversed it. I don't know, a couple days later, saying that because the owner of the business said that they could operate, they were allowed to operate, which was like, so there's really no protocol. Nobody knows what's going on. So I think it ended up being like you're working outside, so that was good. Made things easier. In the warehouse area, we had to, make sure that, we were trying to stay the 6 feet apart, and
Mm-hmm.
all the hand sanitizers and, masks and stuff like that. And but yeah, even like being in a warehouse with all the doors open, it made it a little easier, a little less stressful that way for people. But yeah, a lot of confusion that first year. And as you said, we were fortunate enough that it played into the favor of, it was probably the biggest economic boom that a lot of businesses saw for that region. People couldn't travel, so they were putting it into their homes, into their backyards, and money was also cheap. It was free, basically.
Yeah, yeah, and we had those adjustments as well. Like things were changing so fast, as you mentioned. Like it was like a daily. You kind of had to figure out what was allowed and what wasn't allowed from day to day. So there was a point where we didn't put more than one person in a truck, which really sucks because we only have so many trucks. So I was having to get people to drive their own vehicles to certain sites and certain properties, and that was a challenge for sure. And of course, all the sanitizer and masking and this and that if you're around people. So there were definitely challenges. Glad to see it go. And again, like I don't like during that period. I didn't talk like this at all because I knew that this wasn't the case for a lot of people. A lot of people got hurt. So
Yep.
we were fortunate that by some miracle we didn't. But I never ever came out and boasted about how business was good. I kept quiet about that.
Yeah, that's that makes sense. So now that we've moved on from that era, we're in a different economic cycle, it seems. So I'm curious, with the 2024 season upon us or coming up, how have you adjusted, or what do you foresee the 2024 season being like, and what sort of challenges, any of that?
Yeah, for sure. It's going to be big for us. And the reason being is, like you'd already mentioned, so from 2017 on, every single year for 5 or 6 years was our best year ever Like every single year was an increase. And I'm not talking like 10%. Like we were making big leaps. We were doubling and 50%, increases in revenue from year over year. So we were making pretty big jumps. When I first came into Grounds Guys, I let go of a lot of existing business that I had just because it wasn't geographically sound to keep. But I did roll in a small business of 100,000 in revenue, and in 4.5 years, we took that from 100,000 to just over 1 million. And then what happened after that? Our best year in 2022 was just over 1 million. And then we knew we were going to lose a couple contracts, our municipal contracts. We had a probably 4 of them. We lost 2, and that was to the tune of 400,000 in revenue. So we already knew coming into 2023 that we were, and I definitely want to say this: we didn't lose those contracts because of underperformance or any sort of problem with us. Off the record, the York people that I deal with, they actually told me they want us to stay, but it's a bidding system. It's a tender process. So all that has to happen is a company has to come in and underbid, and they'll get the job. And I knew that, and I was fine with that. And even if they came to us and said, "Hey, here's the price we got. Will you guys do it for this price?" Even if they came to me and said that, the answer would have been no, because the amount of money that was coming off the table would have made those properties certainly not profitable and probably a loss. So we knew we were coming into 2023. We were going to be down about 400,000 in revenue. It actually turned out to be about 500,000 in revenue from the year before, because we let go of a couple properties that were, again, not really geographically good for us. So 2023 was a good step back and a good lesson for me that, even though the municipal money is good, it's not guaranteed. And we did have those contracts for 5 years, so they were good for 5 years. I was a little naive. We bid on 5 different tenders, and we only got 1. I was a little more optimistic, thinking we were going to do better than that. So it was a reality check for me. Like, hey, like you can lose it all real fast, and to have your business cut in half, like that was a real eye opener for me as a business owner, because I have employees and I don't want to see anybody else get hurt because I let my guard down thinking that these properties were just going to come back to us. So we fought through 2023. We actually finished about 640,000, which again, that's a $400,000 drop, even though we did recover about 140. But now the challenge for us that we survived 2023 is going to be, we're removing ourselves from the winter services business. Well, that's 2/3 of our business. So here lies the challenge for 2024, is stepping away from what's probably considered our bread and butter, which is the winter services. And we've got to make up that revenue elsewhere in the other 8 months that we're going to be in business. So it's a little bit scary, but at the same time, it seems like personally and professionally that when I'm under pressure is when I can perform the best. So now our focus is on heavy marketing just for the 8 months that we're going to be in business, and really try and recover the revenue that we're going to lose from opting out of the business of snow. And then, of course, getting back to that $1 million mark and then beyond. Like, we have projections for more than that, because even at a million today isn't what it was in 1980. Like, it's not the same, right? So we want to push to 2 million, to 5 million, to maybe even 10 million if we can make that happen with multiple locations. So there's kind of the forecast for this year and beyond.
Right on. So you're, wow, that is quite the challenge you're undertaking.
You know what? It's kind of like this. This is the way I justify it to myself. I wouldn't go to work, whether for a job or something to do with my business, if I didn't love it, if I didn't enjoy it. I haven't enjoyed the winter business for the whole time I've been in it. When I started 15 years ago, I started we weren't in the winter business. And then I actually bought and took over a friend's existing landscape company, and he did do snow. So I didn't start doing snow until about year 3. And then the snow just blew up for us. Like it's always been from probably, well, not always. That's not true. Once we became a franchise, it's always been 2/3 of our business. Always, it just is. And then you have equipment issues. Like you need to spend some good money. Like the first year when you were asking me about what happened in the first year with Grounds Guys, not only was I drinking from the fire hose, didn't have a team, but I also knew that come September, October, I was going to have to spend a whole lot of money in equipment that I didn't have in order to service these new municipal contracts for the winter. And that number was $257,000 worth of equipment that I needed that I didn't have. That scared the crap out of me. So now that we're not going to be in the winter operations, there's probably a good $200,000 or $300,000 worth of equipment that we don't need. My insurance is going to drop $60,000 a year. Like we were at $100,000 a year in insurance. It's dropped.
Wow.
It's down to 80,000 now. But I mean, it went from when we did over $1 million, it was 100,000. When we dropped down to 600,000 in revenue, it was still 80,000. 4 years ago, 3.5 years ago, our insurance was 30,000 a year, and it went from 30,000 to 90,000 through no fault of our own, no warning, no nothing. We expected an increase, but not 300%. So that's a whole other issue of why I want to get out of the winter business. Is insurance is crazy, and you're kind of handcuffed. Like you have the insurance, but don't even think that you can use it, because you go and use it, you may not get it next year. And that's been the dice that we've had to roll for the past 3 years. Is we don't even know that we're getting insurance until about 2 or 3 weeks before our we're up for renewal.
Wow.
Yeah.
So maybe some adjustments have to be made in the insurance business in order to allow this to continue.
I don't want to get into a big thing about insurance because I'll just go right offside. I
Yeah.
will. I just honestly, I think it's legal extortion. We have to have it. It's not like when you want to go get insurance for your car or your truck, and you can call 20 companies today and get 20 prices and make a decision. We literally go to 23 companies that will handle commercial general liability insurance. And the most we've ever had was 3 companies that would entertain us. And again, no, we have no claims, 0 claims whatsoever, none. And of 23 companies that our broker will go to, 3 were interested, 2 gave us a price. When our insurance went from 30,000 a year to $90,000 a year, we had nobody come to the table until the last company. And the last company sees no one else is there. Cool, we're insure you. We're just going to charge you whatever we want. And they do. And then you have to make a decision. Can I stay in business at this level? And it's really simple. Like if you really want to, then you just grow the winter business. Cool. Okay. So we did that. But I mean, I'm not passionate about it anymore. So it's hard for me to tell and coach others to be passionate when I'm not passionate. And that was a really long-winded kind of answer to your question about if you're not passionate about something, you don't enjoy something, you really should be figuring a way out of it. And that's
Yeah,
kind
I
of
gotcha.
what we're stuck doing now. And it's
So
fine.
then
I'm happy to do that. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to ask, so then for the 8 months of the year, or the other 8 months of the year, what services do you specialize in?
So we've dabbled in certain services, but I'm really keeping it simple moving forward. And what I mean by that is we are strictly going to be a maintenance company for the foreseeable few years because it's easy to teach and it's easy to do. Just basic services, so like mowing and trimming and blowing. That's kind of the bread and butter for every landscape maintenance company. But I mean, we have other simple services such as pruning and fertilizing and weed spraying, spring and fall cleanups, mulch, just simple services. So that's the direction that we're moving. And then once we get the foundation laid and we've got good crew and everybody knows what they're doing, then there's so many avenues that you can spin off of in landscaping, irrigation, construction of all kinds. Whether you want to do stone, you want to do walls, you can do anything, decks, fences. Like there's so many angles to move around in landscaping. But for the foreseeable future, until we can get rebuilt and repurposed, it's just going to be simple services.
So it sounds like with the franchise that you have some leeway or some the ability to make these decisions. Whereas some of the other franchises, they are like they're sticklers for you have to do this, you have to do that. So I guess is it kind of at your discretion, or how does that work with the franchise?
It's one of the beautiful things for our franchisee or franchisor, sorry. They don't tell us anything other than our vehicles have to be properly branded, and we carry out our code of care, which is literally just doing the right thing and treating people right, whether clients or crew members. And that's a beautiful thing for us is they don't tell us that you have to provide this service or that service. Landscaping is very vast. I know some franchisees that they're pretty much only construction. They really don't do any of the simple services because they want that project work or that was their background. I don't have a background in construction, so it's not something that we do, but we can offer that service if I so choose. So it's great. I know a couple friends that used to own a pizza franchise, and the stuff I'd hear them tell me is, they got to buy everything through the franchise, and they don't get a say in anything. It really made me feel again that I made a wise decision because we aren't handcuffed by anything really outside of the branding.
Yeah, that's really cool. Like you
Mm-hmm.
say, you don't see that very often. So that's awesome.
Yeah, like they literally have a minimum royalty that we have to pay, and that's it. And it's not even that much money. But as long as we make our minimum royalty, they don't say anything. So and that is great because that flexibility really does help. Because I don't know, and I mean it's not going to matter in a couple of years, but I mean I'm sure that there's franchisors that really don't want to see you give up something that's providing 2/3 of your business, which of course is paying a lot of the royalties to them. It's probably not too many that want to see you exit that side of the business, and they don't give you any flack whatsoever. At least not that I've seen or experienced. And I know like we have what are called FBCs, so franchise business consultants. So I have a franchise business consultant. We meet once a month, and he knows very well what my plan is moving forward for 2024. And he just pats me on the back and says, "All right, go get them."
Hey guys, if you're into hiking at all, I highly recommend subscribing to my YouTube page, Steve Leslie Hikes. That's Steve Leslie Hikes on YouTube. I have a lot of content on there from some of the crazy hikes that I've been on, including Angel's Landing in Zion National Park. And it'd be really cool to connect on there. So please check me out. Thanks. So Aaron, what sort of advice would you give to someone who might just be starting out their business career, whether it's in landscaping or another industry? What would be your advice for them starting out?
Really, just I'll keep it pretty simple. There's two acronyms that I use, and they've definitely helped. And I think to what you just said, I think it's universal, and I think it's applicable to any and all businesses. The first acronym that I think people really should pay attention to and keep with them, I call it CAP, stands for courage, action, and persistence. If you just apply courage, action, and persistence, that will take you pretty far in pretty much any venture that you're going to do. The other acronym I use is WIT, WIT, which you may be familiar with. I got it from Grant myself, and that's whatever it takes. Now,
Yep.
morally, legally, ethically, whatever it takes. If you can marry courage, action, and persistence with whatever it takes, you're pretty unstoppable. You're going to have adversities and setbacks. That's just part of the path. That's just the way it goes. But as long as you apply those two things on a regular and constant basis, you'll figure it out.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So, Aaron, we're getting close to wrapping it up here. But I like to ask my guest this question. If you have any book, podcast, or YouTube recommendations that you could give, they don't have to be genre specific, but any recommendations at all, please share.
Yeah, I'd say probably I hated reading when I was younger. I really did. I sucked at reading. I probably got bad marks in English because I didn't like to read. I tried to just read the back of the book and do a book report. It wasn't until I was probably in my mid or late 20s that I actually started buying books and actually taking an interest in books. The first one that really grabbed me was Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. So many good stories and messages and lessons in that book. I love rereading that book. So Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Again, you're probably familiar with the 10X rule by Grant Cardone. Love that book. Just really gets you to think bigger than you probably currently are. Like that's a big step to just start thinking bigger. Like 10 years ago in landscaping, if you had said to me, hey, you're going to do $1 million business, I would have thought you're crazy. I just would have been happy with doing a few 100,000 and getting by. Right. But the 10X rule gets you to think bigger than that. And I really think you need to in today's economy. Like you need to think bigger. Don't think small. And then anything to do with real estate. Really, I know Grant Cardone, again, has a lot of real estate books, and he's a real estate mogul himself. But I have other books. Robert Kiyosaki was probably one of the first guys that I came into, and love his material. Although he's an older fella now, so you may gravitate more to somebody that's newer. But anything to do with investing in real estate would certainly be helpful, I think, to a lot of people.
Absolutely. I wholeheartedly agree. And
Wonderful.
taking it back to closer to the start of this podcast, one of the things you mentioned was how you came across Grant was you were at the gym and you just were looking on your phone for or on YouTube for someone to listen to, and that was pretty much the same way that I came across him too, and that is where I learned a lot of my real estate knowledge was that Monday live show that he would do every Monday for I don't know a couple of years, but yeah, great stuff.
Yeah, and I'm still
So
plugged into Grant today. Like the guy's phenomenal. Actually, I was just in a course that I paid for over the weekend, Saturday and Sunday. I was in a course with him. So I usually try and do something fairly big with him at least once a year because I mean it's like reading books, right? Like you
yep,
read a book one time, but I find that when I'm rereading it, there's something else that I picked up that I really didn't get the first time.
true, absolutely true. So Aaron, where can people connect with you if they want to get a hold of you?
You can find us on Instagram and Facebook. It's the Grounds Guys of Newmarket. You can visit our website as well, which is groundsguys.com/Newmarket. That's us specifically if you want to see what our services are. And if you were in the area of Newmarket in and around, so we service Bradford, Newmarket, Aurora, some of the outskirts areas as well. So if you're in the area for some landscape maintenance, we are the team.
Right on. Well, Aaron, thank you very much for coming on the podcast today. And I will definitely put those in the show notes so people can have easy access to do a copy and paste and to get a hold of you.
Awesome. Thank you, Steve.
All right. We will talk soon.
Great seeing you. Thank you.
Yeah, you too. So there we have Aaron Pritchard of the Grounds Guys of Newmarket. That was a great conversation, and I'm really curious about or fascinated by the how the franchise works with them. I think that's really cool that, they seem to have more of like a back and forth kind of team perspective there. So that's really cool. Definitely check out some of Grant Cardone's stuff. Like I was saying, that's where I learned a lot about real estate. He had a show that he would do live every Monday on YouTube. And I believe it was called just Real Estate Investing with Grant Cardone. So check that out. And, like we were talking about the 10X conference, it actually just took place, I believe, or it's coming up. It's usually sometime in February. And the 10X conference, when I went there in 2019, it was just mind-blowing. And anytime you can put yourself in amongst that sort of energy, you can't help but start thinking bigger and having those breakthrough thoughts, even if you can't really pinpoint to one individual saying something. So I think it's really cool to absolutely consider all the personal development, constant work, and take action. So thanks to Aaron for joining us on the PromoMinds podcast. Thanks to you for tuning in. And I'm your host, Steve Leslie. Until next time, take care. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of PromoMinds podcast. I'm Steve Leslie. And if you want help crafting your message or sharing your story, feel free to reach out. I'd love to help. Love coming up with ideas, and we can have a nice chat. So reach out to promominds@gmail.com and I'll respond. Take care.